This is Jesse Hensley.
And this is Josh Turner.
Welcome to Turn Down for What?
All right, welcome to Turn Down for What, where the host, Josh, wears the same white shirt every time. Hello, Josh.
I like to cycle white shirts. It's very simple and easy to match with pretty much anything I wear. But anyways, it is what it is.
It is what it is. So,
all right.
What are we talking about today?
So we got some news articles that we're going to talk about for relevant news for the week within the EV space. And then we're going to spotlight the new announced Lambo Lensador.
Who are we talking to today? Do you know?
We're also speaking to the driver of an Ionic 5.
An Ionic 5 or an Iconic 5. Which one is it?
Ionic.
Ionic. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
I will
see if you get that right here in a minute.
I will probably mess that up. Right
I'm sure you will.
Here we are. All right.
You want to bet on it?
Yeah. All right. So, first news article, Jesse, go.
All right. So,
Greg Abbott.
Let's get that money. Show me the money, Greg Abbott. He is getting ready, or I think he's already signed a new registration tax for all of you EV owners in Texas. You're going to be paying 300 big ones when you register your car.
Is it 3 or 4?
Is it 3 or 4? I don't know.
I think it's 400.
Yeah, it's 400. Yeah, it'd help if I look at my notes. So it's 400 for that, and then yearly you're going to have to pay an additional 200 for that. Now, it's a little high. It's a little high. I think some people are looking at this and going, okay, well, normal people with their normal cars only pay about $75, $76 a year in fuel tax based on averages and everything. So 200's a little high. Do I agree with the tax? Yes, because we don't pay tax for that. So when you fill up your vehicle at the gas pump, some of that money goes into the roads, goes into bridges.
There is a gas tax, which is given to the state.
Yep. So when we charge our vehicles, we don't pay that tax. So we are using the roads, we're using those bridges, and we're not paying anything for that. Now, we'll put a caveat there. As long as they don't double fee you, because does that mean that the tax I pay for the power that goes into our vehicles, is that tax? Yes, it is. So am I paying double tax? And yes, I am. So as long as you can do one or the other, I'm fine with it,
But the problem is
that's a lot, $600.
Yeah.
Just to register your car.
I got billed, in Tennessee, I got billed $100 when I renewed my license or my tag on my EV this year. Mm-hmm. And that's just a straight added on expense.
We got to remember, what is it normally, like $37 or something? So,
but I had $100 on top of the $37.
Yeah. Okay.
So
you were
it's all the regular processing and fees, but they're basically, in Tennessee, I know that when we spoke with the governor's office, they are looking at implementing a higher fee that they're working on getting legislated for EVs.
Whatever the average is, you got to take care of your roads. You got to have your commissions. You got to take the snow off of them. You got to do all that stuff. So,
and I mean, if you think about it logistically, an EV does likely provide. I mean, it's heavier.
Yeah, you're probably damaging the road more. And, what's the other option? Okay, let's do a mileage tax. That's been floated out in some places. Well, that's not fair either, because when you're out in the communities in the rural America, that's not like driving around town. In town, you're able to go where you need to and you're fine. But what happens when you have to drive, 75 miles to the store and back? That's your range. You went 75 miles that day because you are outside of where all of this is at. Now you're getting penalized for living in the counties a little bit further out than you would be in town. So that's not fair either. So there eventually will be a fair number there that can kind of do it. I think 200 is a little high. If your average consumer of or your average ICE car is pulling in X amount per year, I think you should divide it out to where everybody's paying the same. But
just figure out what the average is. But I mean,
600.
Obviously
that's a lot.
A lot of TDOT, and the Department of Transportation's funding comes from the gas tax.
Yep.
For the improvement of the roads. And so it's something that viably needs to be implemented. I mean, I didn't mind paying the $100 because I understand.
I minded. I don't mind. I hate all taxes.
That's
I don't want
true.
to pay anything.
My point is, I understand on an extent, but if they said $400, I'd be like, I mean,
Well,
I
that's a one-time fee when you register your vehicles, the $400, and then you get hit with the $200 just to get your tag, and then every year you get $200.
so it's
for
$200
that.
ongoing.
Yeah, so it's the $200 ongoing versus our $100, so we're $100 cheaper. Let's go
But
for Tennessee.
I think what I was hearing, I think Tennessee was talking about $200 or $250.
Again, it depends on what the average is. Right now, I think that Texas, from what I read, is around the $75 per person is what they pay in tax per year. So if that's the average, then I think that would be the fair amount. If Tennessee says the same thing, but there could be an argument made that because of the vehicles being a ton or ton and a half heavier, that there is more wear and tear on the highways. Thus, that needs to be adjusted. Eventually, you'll have the answer. I think it needs to happen. I think that EVs do need to have an additional tax unless you're getting tax from the power, and that might be the option there is to, what is that power usage and tax it to where it equals what the amount of gas tax there is. Could you regulate that? Probably.
So just some numbers. I just pulled up some information off.
Oh, you're so smart. Let's go to the internet and find out.
This is straight from Drive Electric TN. So this is their electric explaining their $100 fee. But they kind of did the math. The Tennessee gas tax is 26 cents per gallon. Plus a 1.4 cent special petroleum fee. So about 0.274 per gallon. Is the taxes.
You doing math just kills me.
I know, right? So with that being the case, though, they're basically saying that like the average Toyota Prius, if they drove 8,000 miles a year, would basically use 153 gallons of gas.
Why are they using a Prius instead of a?
They also did a Ford Explorer.
Okay, there you go.
Which is 421.
There you go.
Gallon. They did a Chrysler 300 and a Nissan Altima, but at $8,000. Or 8,000 gallons of fuel per year. That means they're paying the state $42 for the Prius and $115 for the Explorer.
So they're giving us the average.
So, the Chrysler 300 would be 104. But, if you're driving 18,000 miles in the year, then you'll be given 259, and then the Prius is giving 100. So it depends on the amount of miles driven. But at the same time, like if you look at an average, let's say 10,000 miles, the Ford Explorer will give, roughly $125, and the Prius is going to give $50-ish.
So that Explorer right now,
tax.
with the way the gas prices are, is about $1,400 a year.
But I think that they're saying that it needs to be higher because our vehicles are heavier, and logistically, where if you were a gas-powered vehicle with our F-150 Lightning, you're going to be at the same efficiency.
Does
as
that
Ford
mean
Explorer.
I get to write off all the tax that I have to? Well, I guess I can anyway because you write off your tax you pay, but, all the tax you pay for your power, But at the same time, if I'm spending $1,400 on gas on an Explorer, for that same vehicle as an EV, I might spend what?
And they could charge EV
Couple
infrastructure providers. TDOT could charge, or the Department of Transportation could charge the infrastructure providers of the public stations but then the private home use, that's impossible to monitor unless you had a special metering system. And so it makes sense to have the registration fee. But I think between 100 and 200 is realistically the difference in the savings, just depending on the type of vehicle. But, that's something that, is a necessary fee, but a fee.
It's a tax, and no one likes taxes, but I can justify it. So
got to maintain the roads.
Got to keep the roads.
So,
but still, it's a tax,
Yeah.
and I don't like taxes.
Next topic: Ford.
Hired
somebody. Talk about it.
Oh, talk about it. You
Talk
know
about
all about it.
No.
Okay, so Ford went out and they got a gentleman by the name of Peter Stern. Now, Peter has been over Apple's everything, from what I remember. Again, I come a little bit from the data side of things, and he was kind of the head honcho for Apple Plus, Apple TV. Oh man, the games, Apple game system that they have, and I know there's one or two things else that he was over that he did for Apple. So what does this mean for Ford? And I think this is kind of where you look at Tesla. The reason it's so popular is because it's a EV car maker, but people who have invested in it see it as a technology company. They see it as a data company. And I think Ford has looked at that and said, okay, how can we make our infotainment system better? Do we rely on Google and Apple to supply everything for this? Let them have all the money that comes into their stores just for our system? We just have an app that's on their system, or do we build our own system? And as you start getting these EVs out there, what else can you use your truck for? So, here's a big battery. What if it has its own computer system, and that is your cloud-based system? What if it has its own communication system? Now you can utilize that truck or that vehicle as the home center for all your technology-based infrastructure. Could you do that? Absolutely. I know you can. I've worked in some of the fields that would allow that type of technology. So here is an untapped market of people who would have, even when you go to autonomous driving, what are they going to do? Do they use their system, or do they use your system? And they've never really pushed, of course, the interfaces for all companies that are car companies. I've never seen one I'm like, wow, I wish I had that interface on my phone on a daily basis.
But the universal, like Apple CarPlay, for instance, is something that
it's came apart because of the infrastructure that's already been built. Now, with this investment that Ford made, are they going after that market, and are they considering to being their own supplier for all of those under their own system, their own maps, their own advertising systems? What happens if you're driving down the road and all of a sudden your passengers can see an ad pop up for a restaurant coming up that was paid for? Now, I wouldn't want to have that. I'd want to block that. But what if I would like to know, hey, I need something around this exit. What is around this exit? And then that gives you the list of everything, and then that list is provided in a way that is based on that type of system that gives you money for advertising what's in that area. So I can really see this as something that is a huge investment for Ford. And especially when you start going into vehicle-to-vehicle communications, and you start going into what is the capacity of a huge battery, and possibly a very intelligent AI system that can go with it that does your driving systems. What else can you do with it? So I can really see, and when you look at the screen, in our vehicles, you have a huge screen in the middle of your truck. What if I can run Windows on that? And that is my Windows system. And now I can buy apps for that program, and it's upgradable, or it's something that I can use on the cloud-based infrastructure, so I don't even have to upgrade it. But the cloud-based is where I get that from. So many possibilities there. So I think it's something that they have definitely invested in the right direction to make Ford different than Chevy and Dodge, and puts them more in line with what I think Tesla is today, which is a technology company working on AI and artificial intelligence with driving and all these other sides. So I think it's a great move, something that most people probably wouldn't look at and say, oh, that's going to be groundbreaking. But for me, as a big nerd into this stuff, I see it and I'm like, man, that is like that is a game changer for me. That is a huge thing that I doubt very seriously. A lot of people are going to say that that's a pivotal time in Ford, but I could easily see this as the time Ford has changed their direction as even a further upwards in compared to their other rivals within their current market.
It'd be interesting to see how that hire affects their product in the next 5 years.
Oh yeah. Because you can just imagine if and then when Apple Car comes out, is that going to have their own system that does this exact same thing? I know Google was working on an autonomous system as well. I think they've kind of calmed down on it, but they were working on one at one time. Was that the idea, that we would take that infrastructure and create an ecosystem that can use all of your other apps? And the one thing about it too with Apple, they've already built all the systems so great that you can monetize the videos and the music and everything else. Just like us, we have all the subscriptions because of that reason. Can Ford do the same thing? They're a car company, maybe not, but they are a car company going into technology, and Apple is a technology company going into cars. So in 20 years, are they both going to look very similar? They're both going in the same markets that the other one is in.
I think if you're a car company, you have to look at technology.
You have to.
As of right now, you have to look at technology.
And you look at what else is there, because what else can you use that for? It's a big battery sitting outside. Can you sell that power to somebody else when the power price gets really high at the afternoon? Can you sell that, 50 kWh and make $1,000 for it because we're in a crisis and we have a big demand. Well, if I could make $500 and know I'm going to charge that vehicle that night, I'm going to do it. I'm going to push that button and I'm like, hey, I'm here at the house. Let me make $500 and then I'm going to charge it back tonight at $12.
Peak shaving at its finest.
Yeah, so peak shaving, that's something that you don't get. We'll talk about peak shaving. It's not about, cutting trees off a mountain.
Mountaintop.
Yeah, so peak shaving is when you take your battery or whatever device you have that has power in it, and you have the ability to discharge onto the grid, and they get paid for that power. So these big battery plants.
It's putting power in at low stress
Low
moments
cost,
and
yep.
selling it at high cost moments.
So if you see all these people talking about these big battery factories, and everybody's like, what are those used for? So what they do, they charge them at night when the demand is really low, and you're, say, 3 cents per kWh. So it's 3 cents per, that'd be what, $30 per megawatt or so. So then you have everybody needing that power when the air conditioners are running at full in the afternoon and it's hot outside or it's really, really cold outside and there's a big demand. Everybody's wanting that power. So at that point, you go from $30 per megawatt to 50 or 100. Or in Texas, I think some places are like $400 per megawatt. So when you discharge that on the market, you're selling your item back to the grid and you're taking the gap between it. That is called peak shaving, and that is where these big batteries, it's not a lot of money, but what on weekends? If you're not going anywhere on the weekend and you're set up to where it charged that night and you can discharge in the afternoon and it gets very, very high or the demand is there, what if you can make 30 or 40 bucks a day? That means you're not charging, you basically are getting your fuel for free by doing it. And then again, that goes back to an episode many weeks ago called that we've got into virtual power plants. I think, is that what it was?
Yeah.
Virtual power plants. So it's again technology. We're talking to some groups that are looking at that for industrial uses for some of their industrial equipment that are electric. We're talking to people who normally wouldn't have thought of it that way, but if you got, say, 30 forklifts, and you're not open on Saturdays and Sundays, imagine how much money that equipment sitting there could make you by utilizing the batteries on it, and it doesn't hurt anything, and it helps everybody else because it allows for it lowers the price of the power because you're supplying more power when people really need it. So if everybody was doing that, you're looking at a very well-regulated system. So I think it's a good thing. I don't know how we got off talking about Apple and to peak shaving, but
here we are.
I guess that would be what I do every time I clean up my head is peak shaving. So
Pretty true. All right, talk to us about the
Lamborghini. So we're going to go into the car manufacturer spotlight. We are showing a picture of the Lambo. No, don't. God. I hate when he does that. I just can't get him to do anything right. What's it called, Josh?
The Lanzador.
Well, okay. Let me see how much he pays attention. When Lamborghini names a vehicle, what do they name it after?
A horse. I've no
A
idea.
very famous bull.
Bull.
A bull. Yep. So all their cars are named
The
after
Lanzador
bulls.
does sound like a bull.
Yep. Yeah, he was old man Lanzador's bull, and named him after his dad. So it is, as you can tell, it's kind of a crossover. I'm not a big fan of it.
It doesn't hold true, to my opinion, to a traditional Lambo. But
If you're going to do so, this is your first EV, you've already mastered the look at what I have built. It is an awesome looking poster car. And they've always went back and said, okay, even when they did the Countach, they did a recent Countach that looked like the old one. It was okay. I mean, I would love to have one. Got that beautiful V12 sound to it. But if you're going to go after a vehicle like that, and it's going to be your first, why didn't you go after the Mira? Take the design of the world's first supercar, the Lamborghini Mira, and that would be your inspiration with the eyelets around the headlights. It looked like it had eyelashes around the headlights. Beautiful shape of the car. I mean, that is probably one of the top 5 cars in my opinion when it comes to its looks. And they have beautiful colors, the blue and the yellow and the orange, bright. I would love to have seen them try to take that and use that as inspiration for their first vehicle because that was the first very beautiful supercar. That was the first. So you use that heritage to build the first EV version of what you have. But they built an SUV. I don't know if it's theirs, so that it looks different than their current models, so it doesn't compete against the, Aventadors, and it doesn't compete against these others. Horsepower looks great. I mean, you're pushing. We had one. Most of the places I saw said 1,341 horsepower. Saw one place say it was 1,360, but that's not much more. It's like 100 horsepower more than a Lucid Air.
Yeah,
so
the
a
thing that
Ramic
we haven't
has
talked
2,000. So it's
you're talking about a price point starting over 350.
Yeah, at least 350. Some
I
places
think
said
you
over
have a
500.
lot more of a, rather than have like a cool looking SUV crossover type car. If you're going for a sport car that looks cool, spend the 250 and just get a Lucid Sapphire.
Yeah,
I mean, a Lamborghini has a name, but it didn't.
And I
pop.
guess they built this because they don't have that type of car. It's not going to compete against their SUV. It's not going to compete against their 2+2 or their all-wheel drives or anything like that. It sits right in the middle of their market, so they're not competing against themselves. But that's the thing about special. Make something special, and a Mira-inspired car would have been beyond what I would have wanted to have. That would have been aspirational for me to look at and say, I wish I could afford to have that car.
Yeah.
And then do your stupid numbers behind it, because it's going to be a little smaller body. You're going to have it 0 to 60 under 2 seconds. You're going to have your, quarter mile in the 9-second range or 8-second range. I mean, you could have made it something and then do the suspension as a touring car to where it's something that
Most people
and it still looks great. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. I mean, it's a Lamborghini. Every Lamborghini looks good, but I feel like they could have done better.
If I'm buying a Lambo, I'm not buying one that looks like that.
Yeah, and if I'm looking, I mean, then Ramic has their car, and if I'm looking at aspirational, that Ramic is one that I would rather have.
With a $3 million price tag. But
Don't matter. It's aspirational.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
Put a $3 million price tag on the Mira look, something that looks kind of like a Mira. I'd probably want it more just because the heritage and that beautiful look. And I've not seen a car look like that car.
And I mean, the reality is logistically, with having an EV on a mega luxury sports car front, it's a totally different thing because that a lot of those vehicles have gigantic rear mounted V12s or whatever it is.
Beautiful engines.
Yeah.
Beautiful engines.
But with this, you can't just put a big battery on the back of the vehicle because it's weight disproportionate.
Yeah,
And
but
so
you're going to have the surfboard underneath, though, so it's probably going to handle better.
But that affects your driving space. So it's either more trunk space with just a dead zone on the backside of the Lambo.
I still think they could have.
You can. My point, though, is it's a different consideration.
I see what you're saying. Because of the layout of the car, you couldn't have done a surfboard under it without making it look like this one has. And you could be right, because, you wouldn't put a big battery in the back that's double stacked, because that would create a pendulum, and you would never be able to get the front weight ratio to where it wouldn't drive like the old.
It changes.
Okay.
I mean, it just takes a little bit of creativity, but my guess is this is the first
They
iteration.
probably could not make such a low-slung car because you couldn't build a surfboard system underneath the driver.
Unless you did some battery in the front, some in the back, or I don't know.
And then
how
that's going to be that's going to make it more top heavy and
Yeah.
probably, I erase everything I say because I don't know, though, because you look at the Tesla Roadster that they've created. That sucker is like low slung and very sporty looking.
It's a design thing that you have to look at, but it's just a consideration when you're looking at your standard luxury sports car.
Well,
They
and
just slap the
you
engine
also
on the
got to look
back.
at who's looking at it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people out there that can afford that type of car, but they haven't because they are conscious of the environment. They don't want to buy a V12, naturally aspirated or turbo V12.
But I do.
Oh, I would love to have one of those. So for those people, this is that opportunity to kind of show off what they have and do it in a way that is not, because the only other way to show off right now is me and you. Our trucks are not show-off trucks. They're not like, look at us trucks. I think the Tesla will be. I think the Cybertruck is such a different look that it's going to be look what I got, you know, because it's so different.
Yeah.
There's nothing else like it that's out there. But this, you have a few. If I'd have saw a Remick on the road, I would know what it is. You would know what it is, but a lot of people wouldn't know what that is. So
They
it's
think
not
it's a sports car.
Yeah, and they wouldn't know it's a $2 million sports car.
They would
so
see. They would see.
I will
Ferrari.
say that Lamborghini does have a striking look to it. It does look like a Lamborghini, and you're probably correct. I'm probably being too critical on it because they may not been able to build the battery packs in a way to allow for the same design as a Mira or a Aventador.
I'd be curious.
Murcielago.
It'd be curious to see if somebody eventually takes on a Mura and does like an EV conversion on it.
Oh no, you would never do that to that car, and everybody should like hunt them down and do stuff to them if they did
Pass that to
car.
Downey when he did that to all of his.
Yeah, but it's different to doing it to his cars and doing it to a Mira. Mira is a work of art. There might be 5 cars that I would put in that category, and the Mira is one of those cars you don't.
But imagine
you don't
being
do
the
that
only
to.
Mura on the road with an EV conversion on it.
People should hunt that person down if you did that to that car. So
I
would rather
see you
see
hold
it.
that one sacred.
I would rather
so-
see it as an leave it the way it is and hang it up on the wall or hang it somewhere and just like it is and just look at it because there's only a handful of cars like that are that beautiful, and that is probably one of the best proportioned cars out there.
Obviously, we see Jesse has strong feelings about this vehicle.
I love it a little bit. So anyway, so that's what we got there. So production time 2028. So you have to wait a few days for that one.
Just a few.
Yeah, just a couple. So anything else that you want to discuss? I think we're going to be talking about solar here in the next few weeks. I think we can finally break out the solar conversation.
Yeah.
Anything else we have coming up over the next few weeks? We are talking again about airports and VTOLs. So we might get into some VTOL action over the next few weeks. Just do one about that and let everybody know what a VTOL is and what it looks like they're going to be used for.
Yep.
What else is there?
Not much. We're going to take a break, and then we'll speak to our Ionic driver. We'll be right back. And we're back, and we have Steve Birkett on the line. He is from Boston, Massachusetts. Are you there?
Yeah. Hi, Jessie and Josh. Good to meet you.
Hello.
So you are the driver of a Hyundai Ionic. Is that correct?
It's close. It's a common miscommunication. It's the Ionic 5 that I'm in. So,
God,
Hyundai
Josh.
Ionic 5.
Ionic. Why did I say
Isn't it
Iconic?
ironic?
I don't know. Anyways, Ionic 5. So how has your experience been with that vehicle so far?
It's been great. We got the first model year, so all the kinks that come with that. But we've owned for about 18 months now, and done almost 40,000 miles. We're pushing, so it's been good for road trips, and yeah, we're having a good time. Family of 4, so we've done a lot of trips so far.
So what in general? I mean, you've driven that vehicle. What did you drive before that?
We were in 2 times Chevy Bolt EV leases, so 2017 through 2020, and then we liked it so much, or conversely had so few options, depending on your take, that we went in for another lease for a few years from the 2020 Bolt EV. Then we are owning the Ionic 5 now.
So you've been in the EV space for several years now.
Yeah. Kind of had a little time with the Chevrolet Volt as well, the plug-in hybrid. So I knew a little bit about that. That got us on the line of the Bolt EV, and my in-laws have a Tesla Model 3. So we're kind of all over the place, know the different landscape. But the Hyundai Ionic 5 is what won us over to actually buy one.
Yeah, I've seen the newer. I've seen some of the newer. I mean, that whole entire brand line looks like it's quite nice. But I've seen some of the newer releases, and it looks like the technology and stuff is growing in it. I mean, I think Hyundai and Kia as well have done a really good job at being a forefront leader in technology and vehicles. And so I think that's a really nice, reliable vehicle option.
Yeah, the 800-volt system, the eGMP platform's been really good. It kind of just night and day road tripping that compared to the Bolt EV, which was steady, but this has been 15 to 20 minute kind of fast charging stops are a night and day difference to the time in the Volt.
Do you know offhand what the battery size is? I don't know if that off the top of my head.
Yeah, we're actually to the decimal point, which is quite sad, but 77.4 kilowatt hours. So that'd be not the usable, but 77 is it's comparable with like a Model Y and those kind of long range Model 3 kind of thing.
So when you plug in at a supercharger, what delivered speed are you seeing on your vehicle?
If it's fully capable, one of the 350 kilowatt up to stations will max out around 240 kilowatts, and it'll hold that for a good chunk of the first half of the pack. So you're getting 10 to 80% of that 77 kilowatt hours in about 20 minutes. Usually is good.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Me and Jesse both drive Ford Lightnings, and the charging capabilities on those initial models, I think Ford was being more protective of the battery packs. And so we ended up, the best that I've ever gotten in my truck is basically 175 delivered. And that's on occasion.
Yeah, it's you have the advantage of the big pack, right? It's around town and you're, not doing as much filling up. You can really squeeze out about 300 plus miles. I'm only really seeing, 220, 230 tops on highway speeds, but it doesn't take very long to add back that kind of.
So that's still though,
that's 300. That's 360
averaging
kilometers. So that's still really good.
With your vehicle, you're getting basically 3 miles per kilowatt on the highway, is what you're saying?
Pretty much, yeah. It depends, speeds and mountains. We have a few hills around here, but mostly we can rely on 200 miles for a charge at least, and comfortably still be able to stop and not worry about range.
I mean, my truck on the road, I can only get like 270 on the highway from 100 to 0.
Yeah.
So it's not really that much better for being 130 kilowatt battery.
My lifetime is right at 2. And so that 2 kilowatts is all I get per mile. So, but I'm a little bit faster than most. So
yeah, well, you have the extra storage as well, right? So different use cases, but certainly we're pretty happy with being able to get back on the road in 20 minutes.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that's a big use case. What's the charging infrastructure like up around Boston?
It's pretty good. Around the city, it's very good. And the only gaps we have, we go over to Ohio a lot, so Midwest kind of travel, and there are some gaps in the Berkshire Mountains still waiting to be filled. But New York State has been really good. There's a lot over that kind of New York thruway route. So, we've been pretty happy with it so far.
Yeah, we were talking earlier today about Ohio, and they have actually awarded 20 locations under the federal program. So they'll have 20 locations coming up for new EV charging.
All along the corridors.
All along the corridors.
But
so
I'm sure you're probably aware of that, but all the other states as well are soon to follow. We've been actually consorting with New York's Department of Transportation on some charging infrastructure that's coming to, additional infrastructure coming to New York. But states like, what are the states you would pass through? West Virginia?
If you want to,
but even states like West Virginia are going to be getting corridor fills to where you won't really be driving down the highway more than 50 miles without finding a charging stop, which would be very nice because I've done a few road trips where the charging stations are 100 plus miles apart, and that takes a little bit more strategy when it comes to
that's where the planning comes in. West Virginia needs it badly, very badly. Ohio's been pretty good to us. Pennsylvania actually just got awarded a bunch of an EVI locations. So that's another good place to look along I-80. They've started to really fill out that corridor nicely. So it's kind of a toss-up between the New York Thruway and the I-80. So.
Yep, and Pennsylvania gave a lot to Tesla, but I think Tesla's going to be doing their dual system with the Magic Dock, so that way you can utilize both. Am I correct? Your vehicle's a CCS, correct?
Yeah, that's right. Hyundai hasn't, Hyundai and Kia haven't gone over yet. They're still figuring out the kind of vagaries of the 800-volt system on 400-volt chargers, but I think they'll figure out probably pretty soon and get there.
Yeah, I mean, I think that a lot of the vehicles have said they were going to go that way, but they haven't figured out logistically how to get there. An announcement doesn't mean an implementation. I think there's a long distance between the two, but we'll see. Considering
is the phrase they used. I've used the Magic Docks because a lot of them are along that route in upstate New York, and they just don't. They're no good for very 100-volt cars at the moment. I was maxing out at like 42, 43 kilowatts, which is back to the Bolt days for me. So, that's a plan C for me until they can figure out how to deliver that power properly.
Did the Bolt have, just to go back to that, did the Bolt have the CHAdeMO or was it CCS?
No, Bolt was CCS, yeah. So
Okay.
they
Well, that was an early
but
one.
it maxed out around 55 kilowatts, and that was on a good kind of, if you were in the right place. So it's a much different kind of vehicle to road trip, but it was CCS, so at least you could find
Yeah.
find the right connection.
A lot of those originals that you saw, I think some of the original bolts had the CHAdeMO, but I'm not 100% certain on that.
And then
But-
before that, they came the nuts. And
Yeah, no,
Lots
it's
of
what
Bolts.
a small number now, right? Nissan Leaf, Mitsubishi Outlander, there's a few that's still around there, but we still see CHAdeMO heads going in around some of these installs, so it kind of takes a while to filter through, right? That's why I'm kind of, on the NACS thing, it's going to take a while for that to really come through, because they're still installing CHAdeMO heads at some of these places.
Yeah.
Wow.
So these
And
things
now
are
we have
already in
three
the
different.
process.
Now we have three different standards on the road, which just kind of makes it confusing for the driver. But I saw a Tesla driver that had to get it was a CHAdeMO adapter, I think.
oh, okay.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, like it's where we really do need to come down to a universal standard. I think that the 2 is okay. It's something that with our charging infrastructure that we're implementing throughout the Southeast, we have the intent to put, basically an ACS and CCS ports out of one station. That way you can choose between the 2. But, that's something that older vehicles like CHAdeMO, I mean, like there has to be adapter tech until the new vehicles. I don't even know if they're making vehicles that do CHAdeMO. Jesse,
Yeah, you've still got the Leaf, but it's really down to Nissan at this point, right? They really need to just release an adapter or some way to make that happen for those older CHAdeMO cars, because that's really the only manufacturer you're seeing at those stations. So we, it's CCS and NACS from now on until NACS kind of dominates. So
yeah,
CHAdeMO will
in
need
North
to be figured
America,
out by Nissan. Yeah, for sure. Because Europe is a different story entirely.
Yeah, we interviewed somebody a couple of weeks ago on the podcast from Australia, and they have Teslas that are CCS ports, because in Australia they don't have the North American charging standard, and so all the Teslas that are shipped there are actually installed. The inboard charging port is a CCS on the Teslas there.
Right, all this stuff's been sorted out there in Europe for a good while, so we're just trying to figure it out because we're a bit further back on the adoption curve.
America loves to be unique, so we'll
Gotta have a special system.
we have to have our own system.
We're going to have an imperial system for power. That way, just to create it.
That's America being difficult, but yeah, there we are. CCS worked just fine for me. I don't know why we have to change it, but I guess that's an Elon question. Anyway,
Because they can.
yeah.
That's what he has. So I think it comes down to numbers. You have, 15,000 Tesla stations out there that work great, and, you don't have that many on the others. So if I'm somebody that wants to use it, I can't. So my gut feeling is, okay, I'll let you use it. But if you do, you're going to have to allow that to be part of your system too. And, they've agreed to those terms. And now we have an opening for more charging. I don't like having 2 systems, but, it's kind of like having a Lightning port and a USB-C. You don't like that either, but you do what you need to do. So.
Yep. It'll standardize at some point, but we're in for a year of adapters, I think, next year, and then we'll see where we go after that.
Our Lightnings are supposed to be getting an adapter, they say,
In January,
February, but I haven't heard anything beyond the original announcement of that. But yeah, I mean, it'll be nice to have the infrastructure opened up for drivers like us, because, in our area, the infrastructure is more limited because we're not in as developed, like some of our backcountry areas on these road trips don't have that level of stations, but they have some large Tesla implementations along some of the routes we take that, would provide the extra opportunity for us to have some additional reliability points. That way we're not solely linked to really, and I don't know how it is in your area, but in our entire road trip experience, there's pretty much only one company as the competition. We're pretty much seeing Electrify America as being the only option on road trips
right now,
with a few other random exceptions, but mostly Electrify America.
Yeah, we've used some Blink and some hotels or some buildings downtown.
For fast charging,
fast charge.
Yeah.
I don't even think we've had a charge point fast charge up here that we've been up. I'm sure they're there. We've just not.
The only one I've used is that 75 kW one over at the dealership, the Hyundai dealership.
I had a Tritium system that was ran by them in North Carolina. That's one that I have used, but I think it was like a 150.
Is Electrify America your main provider? Or do you have a diverse amount of options up there?
Yeah, no, we have a bunch of choices. I tend to find myself into the Electrify America ecosystem because the Ionic 5 comes with one of those much hated free charging plans.
Yep.
It's actually limited for us. We have 30-minute sessions, so we would cut off after that. But it's not like the complete unlimited, but that is the one we would generally look
I
for.
did not
And
know
aside from
that.
the fact they tend to have those kind of, you with Electrify America, that they're going to be, fairly high power, even if sometimes low power is a little bit, it might be derated here and there, but typically we find that they give us what we need. But we have EVgo as well. EVgo has been doing a lot of really good 350 kW installations, and they've actually been probably the most reliable, to plug in because you have auto charge, which is a system kind of like Tesla, to just fire it up. And I know the Lightning has plug and charge, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you have that kind of system where you're just plugging in, it goes off for the races. So EVgo has been pretty good for that. But we gravitate towards Electrify America just because of the kind of couple of years free charging.
Yeah, I don't know what systems EVgo is. It might be their own system, but EVgo was the largest winner in Ohio, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
So
they're going to be in pretty much every pilot in Ohio.
more than likely.
Yeah.
So.
Well, that's the advantage they have. They have that program kind of already underway, right? And I think they're just kind of looking around for funds now. We can get a bit of money to build out some of this that we already planned. So they've made that right partnership right from the word go.
Well, and then you have Pennsylvania that we talked about earlier that won 54. They've awarded 54 locations. So when you start looking at the size, that's a lot of different locations for the state. Tennessee, they're going to be awarding 32, I believe. So once you start getting some of these built out over the next couple of years, that's really going to allow for a lot of options. And then it comes down to, okay, if I can choose this one or the one in 50 miles, what are we looking for that makes that other one? Do I go there because it's cheaper? Do I go there because there's more to do? And that's where I think you start getting into some of these are going to kind of falter because there's a lot of infrastructure in one place. But if you have all these choices, my gut feeling is, well, okay, the cheaper that you supply that power to somebody is probably where they're going to go. Kind of like you with Electrify America, you try to go there because your first 30 minutes are free. Well, if it's cheaper, then free is pretty cheap. I don't think you can get much better than free.
Yeah.
But if you were looking at on the road and you didn't have that option, that's going to kind of open the door. If somebody can produce their power and you're getting that benefit of them producing it on site cheap and then selling it, say 17 cents per kWh, which means you're paying, $20 for fill up versus 100 miles down the road that it's going to cost you $38 to fill up. Now, all of a sudden, those people that have that cheaper price, how do you get that out to people that is the cheaper option and that's a better option for people, or a quicker charge, or a, whatever options you can add on to it. There's a lot of opportunities there that you can go through, and it's going to be interesting to see how it turns out.
Yeah, and that competition is much needed, right? As you said, Electrify America is kind of the only choice in a lot of places. So now you do want that kind of, well, I could go there, but I could also roll through and go to the next place 25 miles down the road, and maybe that's got a better restaurant, or maybe that's got better facilities 24 hours. Could be any number of things, but definitely choice is what the American consumer loves. So
and give increased confidence to those people coming into the space. Because a lot of people that I've spoken with, interested parties are just hesitant because of the charging infrastructure and the time. I don't want to wait an hour. Well, if you can get fast charging and have it more available, then obviously I think that's a world in which you'll see a lot more adoption, because that's really the biggest negatives in the electric vehicle space. I mean, there's not really much other than the fact that, we're working on infrastructure. And once that hits, I think that we're going to see a lot more attraction towards that entire market.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, well, give us any tidbits or any things that you would want to say to a driver that might be considering purchasing an EV. What would you say about your experience in the EV world, and what kind of drew you to it, and why they should choose to purchase an EV?
Sure. I think around town, it's kind of a no-brainer, especially if you have a driveway and a place to just plug in at night. You're waking up to a full tank, so to speak, in the morning, and cutting out that gas errand. So one of the biggest things people moan about is, having to charge up, that kind of thing. Well, really, if you think how long you spend at a gas station every week just on that extra errand, you're cutting that out. So that's a big advantage for people who can charge at home. Silent ride, quick acceleration, all that stuff is kind of well covered, but it's a benefit of driving electric. And then on the road, it kind of depends, as we've talked about. If you're willing to plan and do a little bit of homework, you can certainly make those trips happen, and it almost works as well as a gas car if you pick the right model. But we still have some years to go. So if you're on the fence, then obviously, planning is the biggest piece at the moment for those longer trips.
Absolutely. Well, we do appreciate your insight. Thank you so much for coming on, and definitely appreciate the insight. You're the first one that has driven the Ionic, and so that's a really cool vehicle. I've seen them. We've actually talked about maybe using that as a company vehicle at some point, just because it's an affordable, nice, high tech option that provides a lot of those amenities. I think some of the newer models are getting 330 range, I believe it was. And so, I mean, that's a very doable thing for a vehicle that's priced right. So,
we've really enjoyed it. And thank you for your efforts. I really appreciate the podcast. And it's great to get that word out there to people on different models, makes, and what's happening in the EV space.
Absolutely.
Well, we were talking about the next one that's probably going to be your next EV, which is the Lamborghini that was announced this week.
Oh, yeah.
So that's probably your next purchase.
It's between that and the Rolls-Royce spec.
Oh, the Rolls-Royce.
Sure. There's a couple there. But,
coming from where you do, I think the Rolls is probably going to be the better one until McLaren comes out with one. So
give us your dream EV car. The next one, if money wasn't an object, what would you buy?
We've really got into the camping space and the adventure side recently, and Rivian's brand is just so on point for that stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously, they've had some first-year model kind of things, but I don't know. I find it hard to get away from something like the R1S as a good family camper hauler. So
that would
probably be where we're at.
Yeah, I've been in an R1T, but I've also been around a couple R1Ss, and I mean they
look good.
Yeah, they look good. So,
yep.
Rivian. There you go.
All right.
That was the one. I'll put my head on there.
Awesome. Well, thank you for your time today, man. I appreciate it.
Yep. No worries. Thanks. Have a great day.
Appreciate you.
Yep.
All right. So there you have it. He likes the Rivian. The truck that we have a friend who always mentions that his Rivian is a little quicker than Josh's F-150.
But it's a small truck.
So anyway, so you had anything new? I think from the news earlier and everything else. Now we got what'd you call it to begin with?
I call it an Iconic. I don't know why I did it.
Okay.
It's an Ionic. I don't know why I said Iconic, but here we are.
So there we go.
But yeah, tune in next week for a new episode.
Yep.
Thank you for tuning in today.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.